All right, I think we are live. So used to Alex running this for us. Matthew, thanks for joining us, and of course, Doug. Doug, what's your position? You're with Cars.com. What's your position over there?
I'm the Chief Revenue Officer over at Cars.
Okay.
Yeah.
How long you been in the industry?
A couple of years, but I've spent a lot of time in marketplace businesses. So background at Expedia, Ticketmaster, a bunch of marketplace businesses. So a lot of familiarity with connecting consumers with product, but obviously learning a lot from working with the 18,000 dealers that we work with. So.
How do you like the automotive industry compared to some of the other industries you were in?
I love automotive. I think I love local. I also spent a lot of my career in local, and no entrepreneurs, every one of them, just and so much grit in the space, so much determination, sophistication as marketers at the local level, but also really focused on their community. So it's a great space.
Yeah, it always it's usually the answer that we get whenever I ask someone that's been in different verticals and then find their way into the automotive side. That's usually the answer. So
yeah, I mean, in prior life, I also worked on building some other brands that work more horizontally across local.
Mm-hmm.
And restaurateurs are also amazing in their grit and entrepreneurial spirit, but dealers just have a sort of level of sophistication that is different and marketing savvy. Well, it's a higher priced item, and they're for sort of fewer transactions, and the operations are different in that way. That financial services that go through dealerships it's very different than a restaurant. Mm-hmm. So. Just different industries, and but that same spirit of like, we are going to make it, and especially in the middle of this pandemic, right? Like, there's been a lot of stress on local, but it's great to see local thriving through it, and dealerships are definitely leading the way.
Yeah, no doubt. And of course, with the whole impact of this pandemic, and seems as if it continues. We've seen a huge shift in car buying, car selling, and it seems to have brought about, I guess, some different expectations from the consumer. More of a digital first. Some people call it the come to me car buying experience. Yeah. And I really think a lot of this comes down to geographics, like depending upon where you're located, how much your state shut down. I know here in Maryland, I read a lot of the stories and articles, around the digital, the come to me, doing a lot of deliveries, and, sitting in my seat, I'm like, I don't really see it, because we still had plenty of people coming in. We've had some type of digital retailing solution. Our customers, I mean, they use it, but they don't use it. Where, it's totally different between my story and Matt, your story, because you adopted being in Pennsylvania, you sort of were forced to adopt the more of a digital retailing experience. I know you're making deliveries and such. So, I think it really comes down to, what state were you in, what type of lockdowns. But regardless, we've got, it seems like it continues to push down that more digital retail side. And of course, one thing we saw was all the manufacturers. All the manufacturers were throwing out different programs. I think it was almost, mandatory to be on some type of digital retailing product tool. But with that, I guess some could say as manufacturers are doing that, we're experiencing, I guess they sort of have a little bit more control. And of course, there's some news out there where some of the manufacturers are, taking this opportunity to really change things up in the way they do business and the way the dealerships do business. I'm sure, if anyone sees that, you're probably, me and Matt, we're here on the ground, we're seeing it, but we don't get to see all the angles, whereas you get to see all the angles sitting in your chair.
Yeah,
what are some,
I see a lot, and yeah.
Well, I was just going to ask,
Yeah.
what are some of the most, maybe some of the most impactful trends you've seen come out of this in the last year?
Well, the consumer did shift for a bit, right? Like, we saw some pretty dramatic changes in their behavior and in the early part of the process. But so just as a few examples at the outset, right? We've got something in the neighborhood of 11,000 or 12,000 of the dealers that we work with all badging their listings on cars.com as home deliverable. And those home deliverable vehicles, millions of them, are when consumers come to those vehicle detail pages, there is actually more engagement on those pages and more lead gen off of those pages that we've seen over the last year because of that additional merchandising. Now, from where we sit, like we in the industry and our dealer partners have been awesome at home delivery for years before this. We just think it's been a merchandising challenge, and so we're realizing that, hey, when you merchandise it, when you tell the story of the type of experience that you can get from a dealership like Matthews, like you can engage the consumer early and let them know that that's a possibility. Like my mom bought a car, and my 78-year-old mom bought a car in the middle of the pandemic.
What'd she get?
Right? And she was really worried, right? This was pre-vaccine in July last year, and she's like, I don't, how do I do this? And I said, Mom, that McGrath Lexus in Chicago can get you the car. You don't have to leave your house. Like it'll be okay. And it was just an under merchandised part of the experience that is in place. So I think that is part of it. Part of what, at least we are seeing, is that tens of thousands of dealers are learning how to get that to be part of their merchandising story, to get that story out there in a stronger way. Yeah. And
Doug,
yeah, go ahead, Matthew. Yeah.
I didn't mean to cut you off, but in our industry, it's really easy to check a box to say you do something. The OEM does it all the time. Dealers do it all the time. I know you have a lot of people participating in that box, that home delivery. But do you have any metrics behind what percentage of the dealers actually follow through with home delivery, other than a fancy overlay on a vehicle details page that says home delivery available?
I don't have those metrics yet. I think we'd like to be able to connect the dots and close the loop, and a lot of things. That's another example of closing the loop. But on the, we have DealerRater as part of our family of companies, right? And one of the things the DealerRater is starting to see, Matthew, is that consumers are not only speaking to their experience at the dealership. Now some of those reviews are starting to come across speaking to the type of delivery experience that the consumer is having, right? So what was it like to be able to pick up curbside at this dealership? Or what was it like to be able to have that car delivered to my driveway and have my my trade-in taken away? And I do think that we'll increasingly see, because of the consumer demand for that type of an extension of the experience, come through in platforms like that, and that consumers, just like they seek out a 5-star dealership in general, they will start to seek out a 5-star delivery experience.
Interesting. It'd be great to compare, verbiages through a portal like DealerRater pre-COVID and post-COVID, and see if hot words like home delivery or curbside appear more often, to really see if we really have put our money where our mouth is. Because everybody says, we could execute on this remote delivery. But I really believe that there's many dealers that have always done it this way. And maybe they're the early adapters to this and they continue to do it. But I'd like to see how many people have moved up from that early adapter stage that could really, execute their promise.
Yeah, and let's be real about it too. The other thing that, and I'm sure Matthew, you see this, and Jeff, But look, as we talked about at the outset, right? Local dealerships in local communities it's just an awesome part of the fabric of how business and commerce gets done locally, and it starts with the people. It's not about the tech, whether it's digital retailing or platforms for review, syndication, and gathering. That can amplify how good the people is, how good the process is inside the dealership. It can accelerate some of the things that the dealership and the processes in the dealership do well. And so I think that the best that we see among our partners are they're disrupting themselves on their people and process, right? They're looking at how the consumer would like to buy, like to start a shopping journey offline, online, and then move on offline into the dealership, spend some time there, maybe move back online, and they're looking increasingly at how they can set that experience up so that it's seamless, it's fun, it's friction free, it's fast, that all the selection is there, and from where we sit, we're an enabling technology for demand. We're enabling technology for that type of experience, but it has to start with the people and the process inside the dealership.
I was sitting here thinking, just going back to the reviews thing real quick. Matt, did you just organically, because I know you're a big reviews guy, go after the reviews, as you were getting your customers to leave reviews, were you mentioning to them to maybe, within the review, talk about the experience of the home delivery, talk about the more digital experience? Were you sort of, I don't want to say coaching the customer, but sort of, coaching the customer to know what to put in their reviews, or did that just sort of come organically for you?
Yeah, okay. It's really organic, and we've always kind of used the same story when asking for reviews. Customers, guests, they come up to me all the time. We had a great experience with so-and-so, and it's simply, we're so happy to have you in the family here. The greatest compliment you could give your sales consultant is some online reviews. So if you please, you go on to Google, go to Facebook, go to any third-party review site, and just tell them about your experience. It's the greatest compliment, and that's the story. And we let it happen organically, and we go from there.
Doug, did DealerRater or Cars.com, did they see any type of spike in reviews at the beginning of this, or just during the whole time? And I think you sort of answered it earlier, but was there any type of hot keywords that were maybe being triggered?
Yeah, we, like I said, I think we saw on the site itself, on Cars.com itself, we saw a lot more engagement with pages that had that home deliverable vehicle merchandising going on. I don't know, actually, I don't know that I've seen a stat internally that we've seen a spike in reviews, like an increase in reviews one way or another. We obviously continued to see that those dealers that do invest in reputation, and in particular salesperson reputation, one of the things we're seeing as a trend, and I know we're going to get into the kind of future-proofing a dealership, but one of the things we're seeing as a trend with the best dealers out there, and it's really amazing when you see it happening, is this kind of embrace of the digital first mindset from within the people in the dealership. It's almost like a TikTok mindset inside the dealership, that they know how to do social media marketing themselves, and so let them represent the brand to their networks, to their communities, to their and I do think we've seen an acceleration of that. One example is that on VDPs, on a vehicle detail page, when you've got salesperson connect there, I think it's something like 97% of consumers, when surveyed, say if they could select a salesperson as part of the process, they would prefer to do that. And when they do select a salesperson, they're 2.5 times more likely to sell to buy than somebody who doesn't select a salesperson as part of submitting a lead. So I don't know that we've seen that trend necessarily accelerate or not accelerate, but we during the pandemic, but we have seen reputation, and not just the reputation of the dealership itself, but the people inside that dealership on the sales and service side, and letting that shine through. Using these digital platforms, the best dealerships are using these digital platforms to let the brand of the people shine through. Let them tell the story of the dealership. Let them tell the story of the experience that you're going to have in that dealership, and that's the superpower of local. Right, like when we may talk about this too, but by comparison, whether it's OEM direct or digital only dealerships, the superpower is the people, and so letting that shine through that, let that digital mindset come forward, and let the tools and technology enable that. That's where we're seeing dealers really win.
Doug, what's the presence of third-party used car disruptors on your platforms?
Yeah, so like we've got Carvana and Vroom as customers. It's a level playing field that we create. Right?
And have they did they adopt this home delivery strategy that you came to market with during the pandemic, or exactly, or do they already have their own internal badging prior to the pandemic?
Well, I think arguably there's a lesson that all of the local dealers can learn about digital merchandising from the digital only or digital first players, right? They were ahead arguably on that idea of, we're going to merchandise heavily this notion of we'll deliver cars to you, and I just think every dealer should adopt that as food and water as basics, like that you just got to tell the story that that's a possibility, so that my mom knows that it's a possibility, right? They were ahead on how they represent their car, their inventory, and the descriptions in all, whether it's marketplaces or even on their own website. They're very thorough, right? Like, you can see they're very thorough with their use of imagery, and imagery is powerful. It's the digital front line, right? So, and so that imagery is powerful and it pops, and so they do a good job there. And I think what we see, the dealers that are investing in making sure that they've got inventory, all of their inventory presented well, they've got strong imagery and lots of images. It sounds like basic stuff, but they do those basics well.
Do they? Let's take Carvana for example. Do they handpick the feed that would go to a site like yours, or do they, like a typical dealer, blanket feed and upload all of their inventory?
Well, their strategies shift around, and so I don't know that I can answer specifically. Like, literally 1 month, maybe they're sending the entire feed. Sometimes they're not, and they're being more strategic about it. But I think local dealers do some of the same, just depending on what's going on within that dealership. And of course, they're behaving. And I think some local dealers are starting to behave this way too. They're thinking more across broader geographies. I mean, they're thinking about their inventory as universal national inventory, and shippable. I think is also a durable trend coming out of what we've just experienced. I mean, I think the consumer. Let's start with the consumer again. I think that the consumer is saying, hey, hang on a second, I might be okay with shippable inventory. Yeah, I still would rather go look at a local showroom, a local dealership down the street, but I might be okay. There are certain segments of the market that are okay with shippable inventory.
So a few moments ago we were talking about home delivery. Shippable, is that something different? Do you have a shippable tag that you guys are offering?
No, I mean,
Your clients?
same idea, home delivery, but I'm thinking sort of across state borders now, or us broader geography. Like, instead of my mom who would shop beyond Chicago, but I think there are consumers who are thinking, I'm down here in Dallas, but I'm also willing to work with a great dealership up in Minneapolis, and we see that with the Luther Group and others that are thinking about inventory, the inventory that they have, and how they want to merchandise that inventory beyond what are their usual zip codes.
But the tags that you referenced, those are right now, you don't have anything that's like cross-country shippable.
Well, we do have dealerships that are merchandising their inventory beyond a market. Matthew, you're getting at an important point about, like, one of the challenges, and our UX guys, our product guys, are trying to think about, how do you communicate to a consumer? One, you've got like home delivery, but then you say home delivery nearby, or home delivery from And so one of the things
you want my slogan, and I've always done this, is home delivery shippable Alaska and Hawaii. I mean, we've always incorporated Alaska and Hawaii, because we've sold a couple of cars to Alaska, and we trucked it to Washington State, and then the customer and us found a barge, and we barged the car from Washington straight to Alaska. But
how is that cost efficient?
Listen, who knows? I don't even. It was like a
just a
cross-country
run-of-the-mill Volvo.
It was a great XC70.
There was like 4,000. You passed 4,000 of the exact same kind on the way to Washington.
Listen, I don't even remember the deal, but even if I lost a couple grand, I've been talking about this deal with every guest in every dealership for 5 years. So the advertising alone was worth the transaction. But I'm just confused because, again, dealers are resilient. This isn't our first pandemic. This is our first pandemic. This is not our first crisis. Okay. We love these opportunities. The strong survive. Okay. And my gut tells me that a majority of these home deliveries and these remote deliveries and these shipments, a lot of these dealers have always participated in this. Okay. And then during the pandemic, we got more people to adapt the practice, but for the most part, the top 20% always participated in this. Mm-hmm. And so, but again, you mentioned earlier that you had these new merchandising tools. It seems to me like those merchandising tools were more around home delivery within a specific radius. These third-party disruptors have always kind of merchandised that themselves, but they've also done a great job at merchandising remote deliveries at far locations. So it looks like that's another major opportunity to jump on from a merchandising perspective from both your platform and dealers.
Well, in Carvana, I mean, that they made that their message, having the delivery trucks that are all spruced up with Carvana. If you follow them on Instagram or Twitter, a lot of their posts are photos and videos of their customers with the car arriving on the flatbed. Signing the paperwork right there outside, etc. And the thing is, this isn't anything that any dealership couldn't have done last year before, 15 years, 20 years ago. It's just what you're saying, Matt, is just they've made it their why buy message. Because, Doug, you mentioned that, they've done a good job with merchandising. I mean, I jump on Carvana from time to time just to mess around, and I'm like, I don't see them doing anything more than a great performing car dealership, or even an average performing. Their descriptions are subpar. Their photos are okay. They'll do a nice close-up photo of maybe a scratch or something like that, which more and more dealerships could easily incorporate. But I think when it comes down to it, it's just dealerships still lack that why buy message, and they've been overlooking this opportunity for far too long. And now you got the disruptors coming in, and it's like, guys, you could have prevented this a long time ago to a degree.
The very best of our dealer partners are doing a great job with the images that they put on the site and the inventory descriptions. They're also just adopting tech that allows the connection between the consumer who wants to start online, wants to start digital first, and then carry the conversation forward with a person, and things like video walkarounds. It's interesting to some, and we have tech that can enable that. It's not used by all. Starting with chat, it's interesting for some. They start with chat and they can get into the dealership. But look, it's about facilitating the connection the way the consumer wants it to occur. And I do think that's going to continue to evolve. Or we're seeing it in other. Look, as consumers, we see it in other categories. The way I buy a pizza is different than the way I bought a pizza.
Pizza delivery has changed.
Right, and so I mentioned at the top that I was at Ticketmaster, and in the early 2000s, I was one of the first 10 people that was building Ticketmaster online, and when we first launched the print at home ticket, like that was a revolution in its day, right? And it meant a lot of process change for Madison Square Garden, right? They had to then figure out, well, what happens when a lot of people show up with like printed pieces of paper that are not unique anymore? It's the barcode itself and the tech that enables the barcode to get killed. Point being that it was a process change for the venue. And I do think that the process change and the adoption of the technologies for process change can give the local dealership the advantage. The local dealership already has the advantage.
We already have the advantage.
Present. And it's just the adoption of the technology and the way that the local dealers start to merchandise capabilities, whether it is home delivery, whether it is giving the possibility of virtual walk around, whether it is the possibility of doing the paperwork in a more digitized way. All of those things are tech that enable the processes, and Matthew, inside your dealership. And I'm sure you can speak to that some too. But what we're seeing is that the best are just adopting the tech to make their people and process better.
Matthew, I know you've went through a couple different phases with your technology and such. What is some of the technology that you're using? You don't have to name names or anything, but the type of technology that's been most successful for you as we adopt into this more digital playground.
I mean, we have tools and tech everywhere, but it really it comes down to really the people operating the tools. And where I'm suspicious, okay, and this is from a vendor, from dealers, from OEMs. Where I'm suspicious is is this a reality or is this a marketing tool? And that's why, I ask these questions because I'm very suspicious. I've talked about it before. The OEMs, they talk about this digital retailing, okay? What does that mean, okay? Are these consumers using these tools A to Z? Are they using them in the beginning of the journey, in the middle of the journey? Are they really being used? But the OEMs, they don't care. They're using it as a marketing tool. They want to check that box and they're happy. The same way that we go through a global pandemic and we decide, you know what, we're going to put a merchandising overlay on our inventory that says we deliver to your house, okay? Is it reality or are we just great marketers as car people? And that's,
we are great marketers.
We're great marketers. And I challenge that all the time. And I'm so suspicious of the bull because, we've always done home deliveries. And yes, we have great technology that allow us to do it now. But really what helped us do it is it was logistics with people and training and learning, and learning new processes. We always did deals, we brought the contracts to people's houses and we signed them up. So again, like I am by nature suspicious because I love to call BS on the stuff that Wall Street loves, that moves stock prices, that moves valuations. We're living in a world right now where every manufacturer, every company just has, valuation envy. That's what we have, is valuation envy. We've been a stable bedrock of the economy forever. And all of a sudden, out of the blue, these companies that have never built a car, never sold a car, don't have any cars on the road, have these crazy valuations, and it makes us nuts. So we need to start playing the game. The third party used car disruptors, I mean, they merchandise better than us. And Wall Street eats it up and gives them a crazy valuation. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, your first question is, we have tools for everything. Some we use, and we use them down to the bone, and some we don't use that much. But I want to know what's real and what's marketing. So that's why I'm so skeptical.
Well, keep in mind also, Matthew, you're sort of ahead of the game. I mean, you've been doing things, and of course the pandemic allowed you to, quickly sort of adapt and reprocess some of your processes in order, just to adapt to everything. But you're not every dealership out there. I mean, you're one of the, I guess, more elite dealerships that's got their game together around this. But I hear what you're saying, because as dealerships, we're great marketers, and the fact that, we can say a lot of things, and if you got the manufacturer coming down on the dealership saying, digital retail, and the dealerships aren't following through with that the way the manufacturer either wants you to or, would like for you to, then does that become a miscommunication to the consumer out there? Yeah.
I totally hear you, but I think the manufacturers are the kings and queens at this. Okay, they're the ones that make us check those boxes. Okay, and a manufacturer can make a statement like, we are going to be online only, and that statement resonates with, ooh, they're disruptive, they're cool, they're going to be online only. What's going to happen to the future car dealer? But online only doesn't mean online only. It's not even a tenth of what it connotates. Online only in your brain makes you think that it's going to be an Amazon-like experience, and within one click of a button, you are going to get a car delivered. That's not going to be executed at this time and point, based on our country's franchise laws, and logistically.
The need for wet signature in certain states. I mean, you're right. There are franchise laws, wet signature requirements. I agree, Matthew. Sorry to interrupt.
What online only really means is a bridge between in person and online. An end of the disconnect. An end of, why do I see a $199 manufacturer ad and then I go into a dealership and it's nothing like that? And I like to say, as a dealer, yeah, we're part of that problem, but so is the manufacturer. We both created this monster that now we have to make a statement to the entire market that we're going to be online only, but that it doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean that. So, I want to get to what this really means.
I think, so you're right to disaggregate. Like, digital retailing is a whole big ball of wax, right? And you got to disaggregate that whole thing and say, well, what is it that the consumer really wants to see from a digital retailing perspective? And some of it's what you're just describing there, is the I want to be the research that we see is, they say that we want to be able to begin a process and then know that it can pick up inside the dealership, and they know what I've already communicated to that dealership. I'm not beginning again when I walk in the door. That there's that seamlessness of being able to continue to say, I had this make, model, trim that I was looking at, and we kind of got down to this level of detail. Let's go take a test drive in that make, model, trim, or let's go talk about that product. And instead of picking it up cold turkey, we saw actually in the middle of the pandemic, when we survey on the sort of the disaggregated notion of digital retailing, a lot of interest in the finance paperwork moving into some kind of a digital experience. Now, that's not the whole experience of buying a car, right? But how can we make that a little less difficult, a little more friction-free, right? That's what we saw. Now, that ebbs and flows too when it came down a little bit in terms of the various things that consumers would like to see move to be more digital. But there are opportunities inside of the customer experience, right? That you're transforming a customer experience, and they want to be able to move from their phone to walk in the store, back onto their phone, and have some seamlessness throughout that.
And for the most part, it's already there on the used car side of our business. Okay, our used cars that we post all over the internet is, I would say, for the most part, the price that the customers expect to get when they come into the showroom. And I would say that at this point in time, most of the dealers have adopted that. There is no disconnect between online and offline used car pricing, okay? Where the mountain to climb is on the new car side of things. And that's where these manufacturers make these bold statements. But it's a lot harder on the new car side of things. And the used car, these third parties that we've already agreed they're great marketers, but at the same time, as a dealer, I could be a great marketer as well. I wish everybody knew that, most of their inventory are rejects, the cars that we didn't buy. But again, I think we're already there on the used car side of things. I think it's the new car, and that's where we're going to see a lot of disruption, a lot of statements that make dealers very uncomfortable.
Well, and we've got, I was shared an article around Volvo. I think I shared it with you, Matthew. But, there's an article that came out. It was just talking about how Volvo plans to radically reshape its marketing and retail operations. We've got a Volvo dealership here, and I sat on a quick meeting around it, to a point where within the next year or so, we might have maybe 4 or 5 of each model in stock. And then from there, it's sort of like an order delivery process. What happens if more manufacturers go down that route? I mean, I don't know. Like, where is this going? What are you guys seeing, Doug? This is a big shift in the process.
Outside the industry for a second, and then back in. But one of the things we should all look at is look at Apple. And I think the numbers are that they've got 1 million people a day going into Apple stores, right? But only 10% of the iPhones are purchased in those stores, right? So it is that is the experience the consumer wants. That's the strength of local, right? Like they want to be able to come in and hold that thing and play with it a little bit. 365 million a year. That's Disney parks only gets 130 million people going through Disney parks in a year. Like it is its own attraction. And I do think that local dealers have that strength, and OEMs are not going to look past that. Like this built franchise network and the opportunity to tell the story of the product locally, I think is just way, way too powerful. And, will it evolve? I think some of that story is yet to be written, but the power of the local dealership as the anchor of where you get to go experience that product, it's just not that easy for it to
well, I was going to ask you, Cars.com's always been, an advocate for the dealership, so as things transition in this way, it's like, why is the whole dealership franchise setup, why is it important? But you sort of touched on that, because it's the whole local mentality. And
Doug, you're going to lose a lot of business. I mean, again, you have revenue streams coming from advertising new car inventories, okay? And today, a lot of shoppers, they'll pick their local dealership based on the inventory that's on the ground. They're not afraid to travel a long distance if you have that G-Wagon in stock.
Yeah.
I don't care where it is. I'm going to get that G-Wagon because I can't get it. So what this means now is there'll be no more new car inventory, okay? If, let's say, the manufacturers adopt a process where they're at a holding pool, there's no advantage for one dealer who takes his time studying the tea leaves to know the hottest G-Wagon to build, the best wheels, the fastest turning car. There's no strategy or science anymore. It's all at a holding pool. Kind of gives each dealer their own fair advantage. There's no unfair advantage for somebody who has better inventory, a bigger floor plan source, more inventory. And a revenue stream for you is gone with new cars. So again, like it makes sense. There's positives and negatives, right? I have very highly paid managers. If somebody leaves the store without taking it home on the spot, we go crazy. They're paid to take a car home on the spot, okay? Hey, if the online and offline experience is kind of the same, there's no pricing advantage, there's no inventory advantage. Do I really need these high-paid, variable-based managers to make sure that people go home in a car today? No, I probably need some great hostesses like at a restaurant, or an actor or an actress or a product specialist that I could pay hourly, keep them part-time. I mean, it's totally.
Well, that's
Matthew,
the question: is that the path we're going down?
Do you think that's where you're headed? Because I'm not sure that I do, but I wonder what your thoughts are.
So it really depends on I think on your manufacturer partners. Okay, earlier I said they stay up at night. They all have valuation envy. Okay, so if Tesla is worth X and Ford and General Motors is worth Y, okay, sometimes the innovation goes out the window, and they look at the valuation of someone else and say, we got to do what they're doing. Mm-hmm. What do they do? I don't run a public company, okay? I don't have to listen to my shareholders. I don't have to create value, okay? But when you're in that seat, that is the job. That's the role. And they eat it up all day long. They eat it up. And it drives me insane sometimes as a local business person, because the first day that I'm not making money, the phone calls are there, we're done. How long can these third parties go? How long can these companies go? They go forever. And now we're in the age where every time you open up automotive news, it's all about SPACs and private equity. So we're in this bubble right now. The money's flying in. Everyone's talking about disruption and change, but where's the reality with it? It's and it's a balancing act, right? We give up floor plan, major savings. We give up variable compensation of high-powered managers that I have love and respect for. Their savings, okay? But at the same time, the manufacturer's going to cut your margins, and they're going to say, hey, you don't need the same margins. You don't have floor plan anymore. You don't have management that you pay $250,000 a year for, okay? It's a major challenge.
One of the greatest assets that you guys also sit on as dealers that we see dealers asking us again to help with is data too. I mean, you are sitting on tremendous first party information about who is locally in that market, who's historically been with you in that market, and I do think that'll be one of the the bigger differentiators between the future-proof dealership and those that are not. That harnessing of that data and the use of that data to market locally, and that is also a firewall on the OEMs. Like you
got to be careful with that data, because once we have the data, guess what? We don't need those third parties anymore. I can communicate directly with my consumers that I know.
Matthew, that's great. Like, but every day I'm going to continue to, if you're talking about third parties being marketplaces. My job is to connect people to you. That's my job, and you should get them into your database, and you should market to them. And that is actually the system and the platform that we're trying to create across Cars.com and Dealer Inspire. Like, we create a seamless, integrated system where we are creating demand, sticking them in your system, and then letting you market to them. But there's always going to be more consumers coming along. I'm going to continue to feed into the top of that bucket. 70% of the consumers that come to Cars.com don't have any idea which make or model they're looking for, or which dealership they're looking for, and so we help create that. We're a demand gen platform in that regard. I have no problem with once you should, please, once you have a relationship with a customer, leverage that on behalf of the dealership, and also as a reason that OEMs would not be as effective at marketing their cars locally is because you have data. Right.
So you sort of touched on it. Where do you see the marketplace communities? How are they going to expand? What's the play for the future?
Yeah. Well, first, I talked about the 70% that are coming to us, but there's also just about 5% of the consumers in any given time in a market that are in market for a car, and the marketplace, a marketplace at Cars.com is touching most of those customers. So when they come, within, I think it's something like 85% of them are going to buy a car within 120 days. If you're going to market yourself, if you're going to say to the local community, or just be online in front of a community to say, I have cars to sell, well, be where the people are that are ready to buy cars. Like, that's and that is going to be a big part of the future for Cars.com. I also just described another piece of it, which is the interoperability between the demand generation platform and the dealer's tech, right? And so for us as a platform, as we continue to create connectivity between Cars.com, Dealer Inspire Tech, and Dealer Rater Tech, then you've got a platform in which you can create the demand, you can create different types of digital retailing experiences, which we talked about earlier, right? You can make the paperwork more seamless. You can create a chat conversation on the fly. You can do a digital walk around of a car, all the tech that makes that possible, and then seamlessly bring them through into the dealership and have it continue to run on the dealership's tech, right? On their tech stack. I think that is a big part of the future, that interoperability of the technology. So it's a platform. That's what I see as the future.
You just got me thinking.
In what way?
Just thinking about everything, and as the manufacturers to just thinking about the future. How is it going to change, or is it going to change, or again, as Matthew's saying, is it just filler, from a marketing standpoint, but seeing what Volvo's doing, how many more manufacturers are going to go down that same route. But I guess what I should ask is, how long is it going to be before the consumer is okay with not having that instant gratification. It's so easy for us to sit here and say, that's never going to happen because, as Matt pointed out, customers still want to come in. They want to know. I mean, selection is still one of the, hottest selling points for a dealership. Do they have the selection? How long is it going to be before the consumer starts, realizing, or shouldn't say realize, but starts to just adapt to that
on new car inventory in particular?
Yeah, mostly new car. Yeah.
It's definitely mostly new car, because on the used car side of things, it's a complete opposite, especially with the big used car third parties. They have a lot less reliance on pricing methodologies being below the market, because their marketing has always been selection. And when you have a consumer that comes in based on used car selection, and they end up going with a different car than maybe they had in mind, it's, pricing is not, I'm going to make a list of the 5 best priced cars and go visit the stores. So it's funny, like, used cars is ahead in one sort of way because the online and offline pricing is similar, but then used cars is all about selection and different models. The new car side of things, offline, online pricing methodology out the window. Nobody could figure out. The states say that's illegal. We do this to protect customers. Dealers get behind their strong franchise laws. Manufacturers say, we'll do it in Europe. US, we got to give up. We're never going to win there. But let's get rid of selection and pricing. Totally ironic. If you really think about that, it makes no sense. Okay? So are we really eliminating selection because it's what consumers want? It's because it gives people a better buying experience? No, I think they're using it as a tool to get around negotiation-free pricing laws, maybe. Maybe to not give certain dealers an advantage that build better cars or have more inventory. Maybe it's the only way they figure out how to bridge the gap between online and offline pricing in new cars.
Yeah, and convenience, right? We talk about selection, Matthew, but convenience obviously is another big buzzword, but it's real in that, right? And when you talk about new cars, like if I have to buy and I have to wait 7 days, that's a different experience than if I buy and the car's right there, and that's another advantage for the local dealer. I just think I was just down at Berean Chevrolet. I'm in Seattle, right? And they're limited right now in some supply because of OEM, whether it's chip or just shipping constraints. But when they've got the supply, it goes, right? It goes, and the consumer doesn't want to wait 7 days or 5 days or wherever. They would like the convenience.
Absolutely.
I think
if one manufacturer adopts this type of policy, who knows? They could lose market share for people that want it now. We're the brand. We have it. We have the selection. Come to us. Get it now. Don't wait.
Yeah. Selection, convenience, all of those are powerful. I know. Just on the consumer behavior, I've got a stat here that I actually was just looking at that are nearly 60% of the car buyers reported the pandemic influenced their decision to buy a vehicle, right? 50% sooner than they originally planned. And, we had a record 30 million hours on cars.com since the pandemic began of people shopping. There is an intensity that it sort of ratchets up, and you do wonder whether that intensity and this sort of shorter buying cycles will continue into the future, which would then beg for even more convenience. Like I want the car now. When a lot of these consumers in urban centers who were buying cars for the first time wanted a car now because they didn't want to be on public transportation to get to work, right?
Mm-hmm.
Dealers are the best entrepreneurs at doing that, okay? And I have so many thoughts going through my head. But let's just say a manufacturer adopted central stock delivery within 2 weeks. Where my head is, if I'm that dealer, I am going to reinvent the used car market. I am going to have late model used cars. Don't wait 2 weeks. Buy now, better value. The same way that we sell what we're motivated to sell. Yeah. And no problem. You want to wait 2 weeks for the new car? No problem. We cut all the variable expenses associated with that floor plan, compensation, and then we pump all that money into used cars. Okay. And then the used car third parties have no inventories. The valuation comes to the dealers. Third parties bubble. Short the used car third parties.
Well, I don't know what your thoughts are on the price of used cars right now. I don't. We continue to hear.
Breathtaking to watch. It's incredible. Yeah. It's totally breathtaking. It takes your breath away. How the wholesale market is greater than the retail market at this point, and that's again.
Yeah, going back, Jeff, to one of the things that I think cars, in terms of a platform and demand gen, you'll see increasingly cars helping dealers to source cars from private party, like that. If as that trend continues, right, then the consumer who wants to sell a car and connect with a local dealer who wants to buy a car will be just as important as a consumer is looking to buy a car, right? And so that tech, stay tuned, more on that.
Well, yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, that would definitely be welcome for sure, no doubt. And there's a couple different solutions out there, but they're really. I was one of the. What was Auto Trader had something, TIM, Trade-in Marketplace.
Trade-in Marketplace.
Yeah, I was one of the first dealerships to test that out. And it took it's like anything else. It takes full buy-in. But in theory, I thought it was a fantastic idea. So, and again, there's some other programs out there. So, yeah, I'd be really excited about Cars.com getting into something like that. That'd be fantastic.
I couldn't agree more. We are being out-marketed like crazy when it comes to private party transactions. I talk about this a lot. Like the manufacturers, they don't care about it because they care about moving new models. But I mean, we need all the resources behind us in making sure that we are taking that, because we're losing every single day on that.
What's the percentage of consumers listing their own cars on sale for Cars.com? You guys still offer that, right?
Yeah, we do. I would argue it's been an underinvested part of the tech stack from our side, and for a lot of reasons. We're probably rightly investing in things that are driving buyers of cars to connect with dealers. But there continue to be listings. There definitely continue to be listings from private parties, and there are plenty of consumers who come to cars just with the intent of trying to figure out a way to sell a car. And if we were to just increase our marketing on that, we want to improve the experience a bit first. But once we do, then improve the marketing on that to connect it with 18,000 dealers that we work with, and give consumers a seamless way to find a dealer that is ready to buy their car, whether it's an instant cash offer or an on the lot appraisal. There are a lot of possibilities for connecting and matchmaking in that way as well.
That's what I was thinking. There's opportunity there. Just need to figure out how to bring it all together.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't want to totally shift gears, and maybe there's no answer to this, but is there anything in the future, law-wise? We've been touching on the topic of the manufacturers and of course the franchise laws and all that good stuff. But is there anything here in the near future within the next year or two that would disrupt the way dealerships do business outside of the OEMs?
From a legal perspective,
almost like maybe from the legal perspective. I brought it up because I was reading this article on the carbon accounting for banks, and I posted it over in the forums, and I knew it would get bird chirps, which it did. But I just didn't. I was just throwing it out there. I didn't know if you were familiar with it, if Matthew, you were familiar with it.
Not at all.
Yeah,
I would guess. Yeah, my guess would be within the next year or two, we'll probably be all overly familiar with it. Yeah. All right. Well, we won't go down that path. I was just.
Well, the only thing I'll say is that there are obviously, manufacturers that are looking to disrupt local franchise law and are pursuing that, and Cars has thrown its weight behind protecting that local franchise law and working with our dealer network. And we think that's we absolutely believe that the future runs through local franchises, runs through local independence. And, that is, that's where we're focused right now.
Well, we definitely appreciate the advocacy.
I think that's amazing. But what I see in my crystal ball are these, I guess, non-franchised or semi-franchised electric disruptors that are really, they're trying to challenge our system, and they're trying to challenge by saying, well, we're electric, we're different, we're not a gasoline car. And by the way, because we're electric, dealers don't even want to sell them, which is the biggest farce I've ever heard. Like, when have you ever met a dealer that doesn't want to sell anything? It's the myth that the manufacturers, or these electric disruptors are like, we can have a franchise system selling an electric car because auto dealers, they don't like to sell electric cars. They don't believe in electric cars. And we're like, okay, but that's the myth that's out there. It's really? NADA has a major campaign right now that is debunking the myth that auto dealers don't want to sell electric cars. It's insane.
Wow, I wasn't even aware of that.
Check it out.
I will.
So again, like these electric disruptors, they're like, oh yeah, and we need to, as dealers, you need to be careful because something like this could set some sort of precedent, and as we make this shift to electrification, which again, it's a lot of it is just marketing at this point, and so much is going to change. We're going to go through so many different challenges before we get to where we want to be, but again, we need to fight for the dealers and for these people that say that we don't want to be part of the electric revolution of the car industry.
It's still a car.
And it's a product. It's a product coming through a local platform that is really good at selling that product. So I do think that the manufacturers will realize it is a superpower for them. It is a point of strength and advantage. And lean into that point of strength and advantage more than they lean away. There's going to be noise. There's going to be tension. Even in my 2 years in the industry, I've experienced that kind of tension and noise. And you guys have seen a lot more movies than I have. But
they have the best model on the planet. They wholesale us cars at full retail. We pay full price for them before they show up. When they're loaded onto the truck, we pay for them. Then we sell them for thousands below. We pay for them. And we hope and pray that after 90 days, in a form of a rebate, we get money back to offset that. I mean, I would love that business. I would love for all my customers to buy my product before they took it. Yeah. I would love to float them the delta between the transaction price and the price I paid for 90 days. I mean, they have created.
Why would you get rid of that?
Correct. And then now every 10 years, we have to build a new facility, and we have controls on the furniture and the suppliers. And now it's the electrification infrastructure. I'd love to audit those. I'd love to audit those books. Okay. Because if you do any sort of research behind these the electric suppliers, I bet my life that they're all just ex-OEM guys that said, hey, next big thing is the electric infrastructure. We got to sell this to dealerships. It's America's an amazing country, but we gotta make sure we're going into every scenario with our eyes, wide open.
All right, let's jump off here before Matthew has a conniption, goes down the wrong path.
I'm never gonna get invited back, but thank you guys.
Doug, we really appreciate you coming on. That's it was a good conversation, great conversation, and it'll be interesting to maybe have this same conversation a year from now, 2 years from now, and see where we're at with it. And Matthew, as always, glad you joined us today.
Thank you for the invite, guys. Thank you so much.
Jeff,
mm-hmm.
Jeff, thank you.
You got it. Have a great weekend.
Bye. Thanks, guys. Bye.